Let's talk to David Spencer, Head of Crime and Justice at the Policy Exchange. Speaking of crime and punishment, because the police have said, and they claim it's going to happen in September, that they're not going to bother going to mental health call-outs, and apparently an estimated 1 million hours of police time will be saved by them not doing it. The tricky bit, though, I would say to you, David, a very good morning to you, is how do you know whether something is going to be a life-threatening situation? Because they say they'll still go to a situation if it's life-threatening, but that could be almost any situation, couldn't it?
Well, you're right, Mike, and this needs to be done with great care and great thought. And I think what's interesting is this is a process, the right care, right person plan is what they're calling it. This is something that was actually introduced in Humberside a few years ago, and they've been running this program for a couple of years now and have saved thousands and thousands of police hours where officers were doing things that I think you and I would probably agree actually are not police work, and they're now able to focus on fighting crime. And I think that's what we want to see police officers focused on, is actually the fight against crime rather than doing, bluntly, the NHS's job for them. Yes, absolutely right. Because it does seem to me that whenever you do see police operating in the streets, they can often be seen operating around what would loosely be described, you know, psychologically unstable people. I mean, I saw an incident just the other day, not far from here at London Bridge, and they had handcuffed somebody who was lying on the ground who looked like they might have been with the homeless people who were there. But there was about 10 police officers, you know, about 5 of them were kind of leaning on various bits of him, and a couple of others were standing there sort of watching. But there seemed to be an awful lot of police for one person to be arrested. And I think we're all sympathetic to people that may be having, you know, a mental health crisis, who need medical treatment. I don't think any of us would wish that upon, you know, friends or family. The reality is that there are times when people are in a situation, and, you know, maybe a mental health situation where they are being violent or dangerous to others or even to themselves, and that requires forcible police intervention. And the reality of police use of forces, it's never pretty, Mike. It is never pretty. And, you know, the reality is it does take a lot of police officers sometimes to use force to make sure that's done in the safest way possible. And, you know, we've all seen the footage on social media and on the news, but the reality is the use of force by police officers, even when it's done really well, is never a pretty thing. And that's just the reality of policing the front line. Well, no, that's the other big story that's been doing the rounds in London this week. I don't know if you spotted it, of a woman who was kind of put in handcuffs because she failed to pay, or was accused of failing to pay a bus fare. And the police have said that, you know, it's distressing to watch the video. Because the other problem for the police is that everybody now films everything. So if the police turn up to do anything, you can see at least 4 people filming it with a phone. And it doesn't look good. And I don't understand why they had to be quite so heavy-handed. But, I mean, it's kind of, you know, you're damned if you do, damned if you don't, right? I think that's right. I think it is. And, you know, obviously there'll be a review of that particular case in Croydon. But the reality is, you know, there is something damned if you do, damned if you don't. You know, police officers were there as a result of an approved operation, working with Transport for London officers, revenue protection officers. And I understand the revenue protection officers asked for police assistance. Police then obviously started to get involved and try and work out what was going on. And obviously it went from there. You know, there is a reality. If the police are going to be involved in this sort of operation, then, you know, what are they supposed to do? Are they just supposed to, you know, allow people to walk off without any by your leave?
Yeah. Well, I've also seen pieces of video footage that have been filmed in various communities where the police are kind of set upon. If there aren't enough of them, if there's a couple of them trying to arrest somebody, and sometimes the local community get involved and start kind of attacking the police, and the character gets away. Yeah, I mean, and actually one case really comes to mind from last year where officers detained someone in Leicester Square, hugely violent. It was around the time of, I think, the Queen's funeral. So there was a lot of police officers in London getting ready for that event. And it was the most frightening incident that you can imagine. Members of the public assisting, throwing bikes at the person, large numbers of police officers requiring huge bravery by police officers and members of the public. You know,
the reality is that we ask police officers to stand on the front line to protect us from dangerous people, and at times that requires the use of force.
Yes, and that will always be the case. What about the sort of the soundings that we've been hearing from people like Sir Mark Rowley and others who have said, look, we're going to start attending burglaries. You know, we saw another statistic yesterday where an awful lot of burglaries, I think 600 a day, are not only not solved, but they don't even find a culprit to go after. We keep hearing that they are going to return to that kind of policing, that they're going to attend every burglary that they can. When is that actually going to happen realistically?
Well, I think you make a really important point, Mike, is that, you know, we've heard all sorts of, you know, plans, all sorts of reviews, this sort of thing. We hear about this all the time from police forces and from government as well. What the public expect, and actually what frontline police officers want to do, is actually proper frontline policing, getting into burglaries, getting attended there, investigating every possible avenue when a crime has been committed. That is the basics that we want to see. And frankly, the time for yet more reports, yet more reviews is over, and the public and frontline police officers are expecting to see a difference on the streets. And until we see a difference on the streets, I'm afraid these reports and these reviews are worth nothing.
Absolutely right. David, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. David Spencer, Head of Crime and Justice at the Policy Exchange, on the news that finally in September the police will refuse to attend incidents involving people's mental health unless, of course, they think a crime is being committed or indeed there might be some kind of danger to life.